Last time I was here, I told you there was very little difference between Liverpool after a defeat in training and Liverpool after a victory. Well, we have just had a victory, and I can tell you there is still no difference. These players still act like they are in school. They are still happy and looking forward to what is a massive game against Real Madrid. And you never know it was a big game because they are exactly the same. One addition, Curtis Jones has come back into full training. They are coming back in dribs and drabs. Still no Isak, still no Alisson. But we will be on our way now to Anfield to hear from Arne Slot, to hear exactly when we'll be hearing from those two. We'll also be hearing from Ryan Gravenberch, who will be talking to the assembled media. We don't know which Real Madrid player will be up yet, although I can guess it probably won't be the one you're hoping for. We'll see you later on. Hello everyone, welcome eventually to the latest edition of the press conference review. I am Mo Stewart. I'm finally back in the lab. Not done one of these in here for a while, have we? Yeah, that kind of due to my current schedule. Now, as I said to those of you who pay attention to my social media, I have been recording the Late Challenge live. We were doing a live show down at Tithe Barn on Tempest on Tithe Barn Street. That's the one. So we did our live show and then we did our Patreon show and then we had to pack up and go home. I've just made it home, so now I'm ready to record for you all. Now, as I've said previously, obviously there are plenty of outlets out there that will have told you exactly what Arne Slot said in his press conference by now, but this is the only place where he really analyses exactly what he means by that. So hopefully it's not too late for you. Hopefully you haven't been waiting too long to get your Mo fix, because here it is. Now, we normally start these shows with an update about our injuries. And again, you'll probably know all this just as well by now. As I mentioned earlier today, Curtis Jones is back. Alexander Isak is not. And neither is Alisson. Now, Slot did open the door slightly in his press conference to the idea that Isak may be in the squad on Sunday for Manchester City. Personally, I wouldn't be surprised if he isn't, simply because opening the door to Isak being involved against Manchester City opens the door for him to be involved again for Sweden during the international break. And my suspicion is that Liverpool would rather sacrifice having him available for the Man City game in order to keep him rested and recuperating throughout that break. Now, Sweden have been good in terms of being able to marry their wishes up with those of Liverpool over the course of the last couple of international breaks, but this is a new manager and there's a certain sense of desperation about where they are at the moment at the bottom of their World Cup qualifying group. So the temptation may be there to play him a little bit more than he should have. Side note on Alexander Isak, actually. An interesting thing I saw today was regarding this injury that he's got. We haven't heard a whole lot about, but we are led to believe it's a groin injury. Now, he did have a groin injury towards the end of his Newcastle career that kept him out for a certain amount of months. And the understanding is that they were reluctant to give him surgery at that point. They thought that he could kind of muddle through. Liverpool would have been aware of this when they did the medical over the course of September for when he signed. I wonder whether or not this is something that eventually he is going to have surgery on. And also, when that's going to happen and when is the best time for that to happen. Is it possible for him to do the surgery now and recover before Mo Salah goes to AFCON? I'm not a doctor, so I don't know. Or would it be likelier that Liverpool wait until the summer when Isak may or may not be playing for the World Cup for Sweden and do it then? We'll have to wait and see, but keep a pin in that one. Anyway, that's the injury news done. It's time for top takeaways. Top takeaway number 1, Real Madrid are a good team, but so are Liverpool. There were plenty of questions from the Spanish journalists about the quality of Real Madrid and whether or not Arne Slot felt that this year's vintage were better than last year's vintage, and had he seen this player or that player. And he was even asked about Vinicius Jr. and about what he thought about his attitude when he was substituted in the Clasico. Now, Slot's been around the block too many times to get involved in any of that stuff, but it does characterise some of the questions from Real Madrid journalists or Spanish journalists as almost trying to tempt Slot into saying something that may well be uncomplimentary, let's say, or maybe something that can be used as bulletin board material, as they call here in England. And Slot did not do any of those things. He was very keen to praise both past and present Real Madrid. Obviously, we didn't talk about future Real Madrid. So he praised Ancelotti as well as he praised Xabi Alonso. He praised the players that have been there last season. But he also mentioned the fact that obviously injuries curtailed that team who came to Anfield last November. So this one will probably be a tougher prospect to face. And this is all before we get to that guy who we are going to talk about, but not in this point. But the one thing I did like is that every time Arne Slot gave praise to Real Madrid, he was very, very keen to then give praise to Liverpool. It wasn't a case of him paying due respect to this wonderful, amazing club and that Liverpool are really lucky to be playing in such a wondrous game against such a wonderful team. No, he said that his team was good too and his players were good too, and it will be a test for them as much as it would be a test for Liverpool going up against Real Madrid. There was no sign of any inferiority complex. And when you look at the recent results between the two sides, Liverpool's win last season was their first in 9 games against Real Madrid. There's been one other draw, which was in the second leg of a game that the first leg was already defeat, and 7 defeats, including 2 Champions League finals. So it would be kind of understandable if there was an inferiority complex to a certain degree, but Slot was not putting any of those vibes out there. He wanted everybody to know that he sees these two teams as equals. And that's something that no doubt he'll be telling the rest of his squad as well. And that's also the attitude that he would hope that the fans arrive with at Anfield tomorrow evening. And I think that's a really important point as well. I think the times when Liverpool fans would turn up to a game against Real Madrid looking to get selfies from Ronaldo and stuff like that are over. This is a team who Liverpool are as good as. Liverpool need to believe that they have as much divine right to win in the Champions League as anybody else, including Real Madrid. And I think Slot was putting the building blocks in place to make sure everybody was in no doubt of that fact. Top takeaway number 2, Slot is not going to tell you how to feel about Trent Alexander-Arnold. Now, I alluded to that in the first point, that he wasn't willing to go down the road of talking about how he thinks the fans should feel and what kind of reception he wants to see from fans. In fact, he wouldn't even go so far as to say what he expects to see from fans. He only wanted to talk about him and how he would receive Trent Alexander-Arnold and the positive experiences he has from him as a player, working with him last season, and as a man, and notably as a vice captain as well. So we forget this. He was a vice captain of that team. So Slot coming into this group new would have lent on his leaders really, really strongly to be able to guide him in terms of what the group is like, what he can do with them, what he can't do with them. And he was very, very keen to praise Trent Alexander-Arnold as being part of that leadership group, along with obviously Virgil van Dijk, but Alisson, Mo Salah, Andy Robertson are part of that group as well. So Slot was only going to say positive things about Trent Alexander-Arnold. But what he wasn't going to do is tell other people how they should feel. And this was something that kind of tripped him up a little bit towards the end of last season, because he was kind of in conflict with a lot of the Liverpool fan base in terms of how he used Trent. There were plenty of times when people wanted Trent out of the team, out of the squad. From the moment that he announced that he was leaving, there were lots of people who wanted him gone, and understandably so. But Arne Slot was a pragmatist. He was like, no, this is a player who I believe in, who I believe can make this team better. For as long as I've got hold of him, I'm going to use him. And as I say, he came into conflict with quite a few people around that, coming to a head in that Arsenal game at home in May. But this time, the difference is that Trent isn't a Liverpool player. Trent's a Real Madrid player. Now, when he was in Liverpool's squad, Slot was very understanding that any negativity towards Trent could harm the group, and he was very protective of that group mentality, that group ethic, the group chemistry, which would explain why he was a lot more willing to go out on a limb in terms of Trent. But he's wearing white now. He's not wearing red. So there are no rules. There are no implications of what he believes that Liverpool fans should do. Liverpool fans are free to feel as negative towards Trent Alexander-Arnold as they want. And I think this is a key distinction. You can still maybe not want to go down the road of calling him a rat and all this and that and the other. But he turns up tomorrow. If he comes onto that pitch, he is the enemy. And for as long as he's on that pitch, he should and will be treated as such. And I think, as I said, this is a very clear distinction between how Slot was feeling about Trent when he was in red compared to how he'll be in white. Top takeaway number 3, expect Alexis Mac Allister to be the odd man out in midfield. Now, I say the odd man out. Curtis Jones will probably be in the squad as well, and I expect him to be on the bench. But there was lots of talk from Slot around the idea of players playing lots of games, getting used to still playing 3 games in a week. He was talked about this in context of Florian Wirtz, but also Conor Bradley. He talked about it a little bit with Dominik Szoboszlai, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the implication was he was still keen to make sure that he got the maximum effort and energy out of his players. He's still slightly wary of overplaying them and drawing more injuries out of a squad which has already gone a little bit thinner than most people would like and appreciate. I think it was notable in the open training earlier. There were a few more of the youth players than we normally see. Amara Nello was training. Normally it's just Trainioni, Rio Ngamoa, Calvin Ramsey was in training with the squad as well. And there were a few other younger faces. So Slot is very keen to, as I say, protect the players he has in his squad. And for that reason, I suspect that Alexis Mac Allister may well be the man who misses out against Real Madrid, because he played last midweek against Crystal Palace. He was one of the two first team players, along with Andy Robertson, who did play in that game. And obviously, the idea that he would play 4 games in a row against Crystal Palace, Aston Villa, Real Madrid, and then Man City is highly unlikely, particularly someone like Mac Allister, who has been dealing with fitness and injury issues for a long time. It would seem kind of foolhardy and almost dangerous to play him in all those games. So then you get into a situation of thinking, well, okay, if he's not going to play, who is going to play? Well, maybe that German fella who wasn't playing at the weekend, Florian Wirtz. I suspect Liverpool will look at the situation, and with these 2 games against Real Madrid and Manchester City coming up, and saying, which one of these do I want Florian Wirtz to start? I think it would be the home game against Real Madrid, where Liverpool will be on the front foot, compared to the away game against Manchester City, where there's going to need to be lots more energy and bites. I think if you look at the way that Alexis Mac Allister played against Aston Villa, he was more like his old self, winning the ball back and basically getting his hands dirty in midfield. So the idea of having that Mac Allister for the game at the Etihad, particularly one who's had a little bit more rest, having not started in midweek, makes much more sense. So I expect to see Florian Wirtz, at least from the start against Real Madrid, and Alexis Mac Allister from the start against Manchester City. Now it's time to hear Arne Slot answer my question, which technically was about Dominik Szoboszlai, but was also about Florian Wirtz.
Hi, Arne. We've seen Dominik Szoboszlai excel in plenty of positions this season, but on Saturday against Aston Villa, we saw what he can really bring to that number 10 position. He was dropping deep and helping with the build-up, but also helping in attack, getting shots off and leading the press. I wondered, what's the key to being able to keep those qualities within the team when Florian Wirtz is playing as a number 10?
How to keep? Sorry, the last.
How to keep those qualities of pressing, of helping with the build-up, but also affecting the attacking game once Florian Wirtz is playing in 10?
Then he plays in a different position. If Florian plays, then he plays in a different position, and he can bring all the things you just said in that other position. It may be a bit different if you are playing at 10 or at 8 or at a right fullback, but he's, like you said, I think has been very influential in every game we've played, in every position I've played him. So every game, maybe, how do I say this? Ask different things from a number 10 or from a number 2 or from a number 8, depends on the playing style of the opponent. How important is pressing in a game? I think it was a bit more important against Villa than all the other home games we've played, pressing. But I need to be really careful which words I use. But yeah, he indeed, I agree with you that he played a good game against Villa. Yeah.
So yes, as I mentioned earlier, my question was not just about Dominik Szoboszlai. It's a difficult situation because I was trying to understand from Slot where he sees his plans are, because we heard so much in the summer about how Florian Wirtz was tempted to Liverpool by the game plan. And yet it's been clear that there's been lots of variations of the game plan that we've seen over the course of these last few weeks. And it feels a little bit like Liverpool still searching, and Slot himself is still searching for the best use of Florian Wirtz. And then you get into a situation where you're losing game after game after game after game. Confidence is drawn. The knives are sharpening. Liverpool need a win. So what does he do? He goes back to the safety net, the comfort blanket of that midfield from last season. And what does it do? It works a treat. Not only do we see the best version of Mac Allister, Gravenberch's just Gravenberch still, but Szoboszlai was superb in that game. Not only dropping deep to build up with the play, help with the build up, help with Liverpool being able to progress the ball forward through the pitch, but then turning up at the top end, arriving on the edge of the box, getting shots in, creating chances for other people, and leading the press. That was the part I think that was the most important. You saw the amount of times where he was sprinting towards Emi Martinez or one of the centre-backs and putting them under pressure. And we saw the way that Aston Villa dealt with that pressure, which was badly. I also think that he was a key influence in Mo Salah's game as well. Again, we saw last season how much having Dominik Szoboszlai next to him helped Mo Salah in terms of being able to gain himself a bit of space, but also in the times when Mo Salah wasn't tracking back as much as he would like, or as much as a lot of other players would, Dominik Szoboszlai could do double shifts. Although I do think that Mo Salah was doing a little bit more of that against Aston Villa than he gets credit for. All of which is to say, it's all well and good doing that, and doing it in the short term and getting a win and getting confidence back. But look, the plan is clearly to have Florian Wirtz playing as the 10. So there needs to be a way for Florian Wirtz playing as the 10 to give a lot of that same energy, be able to lead the press. But then, do we actually want Florian Wirtz to do all of the Dom Szoboszlai things? So, for example, do we want him dropping deep alongside the other midfielders to help with the build-up? Or do we want to keep him close to the goal, close to the attackers, to be able to weave patterns with them and be able to create ultimate havoc? So essentially my question was, how do we do that? How do we find a place for Florian Wirtz which isn't losing out on some of the best qualities we have of when Dom Szoboszlai is playing as the 10? And the answer might be Dom Szoboszlai playing as the 8 and doing those things, as Slot mentioned. I also think it was interesting the way that Slot mentioned that there are certain games where pressing is more important than others. I suspect that he means teams who play out from the back as opposed to teams who play long balls. So that one was more suited to a Szoboszlai style of play. Now, you'll be surprised to find out Real Madrid actually play more long balls than you realise. I think they are one of the top teams in terms of playing longer balls in La Liga. But most of those are coming from the centre-backs rather than from the goalkeeper. So Dean Howson, who was up for in front of the press late this evening after I'd already gone. He's been playing quite a few longer passes, but these aren't aimless long balls to compete. These are long passes into the path of the likes of Vinicius and Mbappe to run onto. So there may well be more of a scope to have a player who isn't necessarily going to be pressing up against those centre-backs, but still going to be positioned in places to win second balls and turn around and run at their opponent's attack. So it might be one that suits Florian Wirtz a little bit more. We'll have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm probably going to keep chipping away at that little particular scene because I don't feel like it was a fully satisfactory answer from Slot. I feel like it was one that he kind of sidestepped a little bit. But I'll keep trying. I'm going to try to find a way to get him to really dive in on what he thinks the difference is between Szoboszlai as a 10, Wirtz as a 10, and how do Liverpool get to the point where he's not having to take him out in certain situations where Wirtz can really just play week in, week out. Because I think that's really the way to get the best out of him. That's the way for him to get used to what it is to play for Liverpool, is to keep playing for Liverpool. So there you have it. It was late and it was longer than I usually do in recent weeks, but that is your press conference review. As I mentioned on Friday, unfortunately, I will not be in the press box at Anfield tomorrow night, although I'm still holding out hope that I'll be in the ground. More news on that later. But as you can tell, I will still be doing lots of different work. I've been doing the late challenge today. Go and check it out on YouTube. I will be on the Anfield Wrap tomorrow, doing the Rob and Mo show with Rob Gutman, and I will be all over the shop. I will still be, hopefully, at the Etihad on Sunday. But before that, we have another late challenge live show happening on Saturday night, which is also my birthday. So check me out where you can find me, and hopefully I'll see you again soon.